The first thing Ian noticed was the glitter. Not starlight, not hull reflection, not the usual chemical spill from a busted coolant pipe, but a silvery, glimmering trail on the ground, catching light in lazy sparkles. That was strange enough on its own, but even stranger was that it led directly into an alley behind Docking Bay 42, otherwise known as the smelly side of the station. That was the unofficial name. The official name was the Independent Trading and Salvage Terminal, Yuln 9B. Nobody used that one except the tax collectors, and they hadn't been seen in 3 lunar cycles. Ian, clutching a half-eaten skewer of something vaguely poultry-flavored, tilted his head and stared. The trail curved behind a row of stacked cargo modules, one of which still had "Do Not Eat" scrawled on its side in 4 languages, including one that glowed in the dark. He hesitated, then sighed. "Great," he muttered. "This is how horror sims start. Dumb mechanic follows weird shiny trail, gets eaten by plasma vampire, or worse, has to file paperwork." Still chewing, he followed it. The glitter thickened near the wall and pooled around a slumped figure. At first, Ian assumed it was just another burned-out cargo hauler catching a nap. That happened. Once he'd slept in a dumpster to avoid rent. It wasn't dignified, but space wasn't cheap. But then the figure moved. Her head lifted. Ian froze, skewer halfway to his mouth. She was humanoid. More than that, she was beautiful, but not in the way synthetic influencers were. She had that rough-edged beauty of someone who'd fought planets and maybe won. Long dark hair tangled and matted with grit. A cut across one cheek bled the same silver fluid that glittered on the floor. And her ears, gods above. They were long, elegant, curling back like twin crescent blades. Not cosmetic, too seamless, too alien. "Hey," Ian said softly, lowering the skewer. "You okay?" She didn't answer right away. Her eyes, gray but not dull, more like forged steel, flicked to his face, scanning, then down to his snack. "Is that food?" she asked, voice hoarse. Ian blinked. Technically. You want it?" She nodded once. Ian handed it over. She took it like someone who'd never seen a skewer before, examining it for hidden weapons or maybe a tracking device, then bit down. Her expression shifted through pain, confusion, and something perilously close to joy. "Oh, you poor thing," Ian said. "You've never had mystery meat before, have you? Welcome to the dark side." She coughed, then chuckled. "What? Animal? I don't ask. Could be synthetic. Could be moon lizard. Could be regret, honestly." She smiled, a small, cracked thing, but it was enough to pull something in Ian's chest loose. "I'm Ian," he said. "Ship mechanic, star-class certified, though technically my license is pending." "You?" She hesitated. "Kyle." "Just Kyle?" "For now." "That's mysterious. I like it." Ian looked around. "You bleeding from somewhere important, or is this decorative sparkle juice?" Kel looked down at her side. A wide tear in her jumpsuit revealed a wound, pulsing with faint light. "Shrapnel," she said. "I removed most of it. Some remains." "Neat. That's my favorite kind of wound. Only partially fixed." "Okay, can you walk?" She tried, failed, grimaced. Ian stepped closer, offering a hand. "You don't know who I am," she said, not taking it. "Nope. Should I?" Cal tilted her head, staring. "Most would not dare touch me." Ian shrugged. "I once hugged a bounty droid by mistake. Thought it was a vending unit. Got electrocuted and overcharged. I'm immune to shame now." Something flickered in her expression. Amusement, maybe, or disbelief. Either way, she took his hand. "Let's get you patched up," Ian said. "My ship's not fancy, but it has chairs and soup." "Well, liquid. That used to be soup." As they shuffled out of the alley, Cal leaned heavily on him. Her balance was off. Gravity wounds, maybe. Her armor, what remained of it, looked ceremonial, with etched lines and a faint humming thread along the collarbone. Definitely not the average cargo captain's getup, but Ian didn't pry. Not yet. They reached the spare wrench, which looked like someone had taken an old freighter, bolted on 3 different engine types, and prayed. Ian guided her through the side hatch, past the duct-taped med bay and into the common area. "Here," he said, guiding her to a recliner made from two mismatched pilot seats. "This is the captain's chair. Well, technically the only chair that reclines without sparking." Kyle sank into it with a sigh that sounded like she hadn't sat in weeks. Ian rummaged through a crate and returned with a med spray, a half-charged bandage coil, and what might once have been a clean towel. "This'll sting," he warned. Kale didn't flinch when he pressed the bandage to her side. The silver blood reacted, hissing slightly. She studied him the whole time, as if trying to map out the shape of his soul. "You're not afraid," she said. "Of you? Not yet, unless you're hiding fangs. Would it matter if I were?" "Well," Ian said, "I have bad luck with teeth. Once dated a girl with cyber jaws. Accidentally said the wrong name mid-kiss. She bit through my collarbone." Kale blinked. "You survived that?" "I have a lot of scars," he said proudly. "Most emotional." She laughed again. This time it turned into a coughing fit, which ended with her slumping further into the chair. "You can rest here," Ian said gently. "No one checks my ship, not even the rent collectors." Kyle closed her eyes. "You're kind." "I'm bored," Ian said. "Kindness is just what happens when I'm unsupervised." She smiled faintly. Ian stared at her ears a moment longer, curiosity burning, then looked away. Outside, unnoticed by either of them, a flickering probe zipped past the window. It paused for half a second, captured a single blurred image of Kale's face, and zipped away, trailing sparks into the void. The next morning, or what passed for morning aboard a station orbiting a moon that spun like a drunken top, Ian woke to the gentle hum of systems cycling and the less gentle sound of someone reprogramming his kitchen assistant with a plasma torch. He stumbled into the galley, squinting. Kyle stood in front of the countertop, barefoot, using what looked like a ceremonial dagger to pry open a nutrient cartridge. "Good morning," Ian croaked. "Do all galactic dignitaries perform knife-based culinary rituals? Or am I just blessed?" Kale didn't look up. "Your food box refused to open. That's the coffee slot. It only responds to threats and caffeine desperation." She glanced at the label, then back at the cartridge. "This explains the bitterness." Ian rubbed his eyes and plopped into the only chair not holding tools or laundry. "You slept all right?" "I entered a regenerative stasis cycle." She paused. "In your chair?" "Yeah, it was either that or the shower stall, which has a vendetta against non-humans, by the way. Sprayed me with scalding mist once for humming off-key." Kel placed the open cartridge on the table. The contents jiggled. Ian stared at it with the same expression he used when inspecting malfunctioning gravity cores. "Is that dessert?" "It was labeled Choco Fusion Delight." He poked it with a fork. It made a squelching sound and attempted to reclaim its former shape. "That fusion part might involve dark matter." Kale tilted her head. "This vessel is primitive." "Hey, I'll have you know the spare wrench has passed every inspection it was able to avoid." She actually smirked at that. Ian sipped from a mug of coffee that tasted suspiciously like oil and leaned back. "So, Kyle," he said casually, "you gonna tell me who's chasing you, or do I just assume it's an X with a planetary cannon?" She hesitated, gaze flickering toward the viewport. Out in the void, a field of satellites orbited silently, blinking like distant bugs. "I cannot say," she replied. "Not yet." "Not because of secrecy," Ian guessed, "but because you don't trust me." "I do not know you." "Fair. I don't even know me before caffeine." Cal folded her arms. "Why did you help me?" Ian shrugged. "You were bleeding glitter and looked like you'd fought 3 wars before breakfast. Also, I'm a sucker for weird ears." She blinked. "Is that a euphemism?" "No, I mean literally. Your ears. They're cool." She reached up self-consciously, touching one of them. "On my world, they are a sign of heritage. On my world, they'd be a sign of cosplay. Either way, they suit you." Silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable exactly. More like two people waiting for the punchline to land. Then the ship's AI chimed in with a cheerful, glitchy voice. "Unregistered vessel detected in orbit. 1.8 kilometers. Scanning protocols engaged. Probably hostile. Please remain indoors and don't make eye contact." Ian stood so fast he knocked over his chair. Okay, definitely not my ex. She wouldn't show up in a registered ship. Kyle's expression shifted instantly. Calm evaporated, replaced with something sharp and focused. Do you have weapons? Do a wrench and passive-aggressive commentary count? She was already moving toward the control console, her steps fluid despite the bandage still wrapped around her side. Ian followed, half awake, heart thudding. Through the forward viewport, a ship hovered. A black, needle-shaped vessel bristling with antennas and heat sinks. No insignia, no lights, just menace and angles. They've found me, Cal said softly. Ian scratched his head. You sure it's not just a very confused pizza drone? Positive. The console flickered. A signal came through, static, then a low voice. By decree of the Astral Council, the High Matriarch is ordered to surrender immediately. Ian blinked. I'm sorry, hi what now? Cale didn't look at him. Ignore it. The voice continued. Your sanctuary is unauthorized. Your companion will be disintegrated as a precautionary measure. Ian raised a finger. Okay, so we're skipping the warning shots now? Cale tapped a sequence into the nav panel, faster than he could follow. Can this ship move? Define move, like wiggle or flee in dramatic fashion. Cale's hands blurred over controls and suddenly the spare wrench groaned to life, engines cycling up. Ian's jaw dropped. Hey, I've been trying to fix that thruster for 2 months. You forgot to override the auxiliary flow gate, Cale said. I thought that button was decorative. The ship lurched, peeled away from the docking orbit, and veered into a lower trajectory. The black vessel pursued. Okay, Ian said, gripping a pipe for balance. So you're a high matriarch, whatever that means. And they want you back. Badly. Cale gave him a glance. You still helped me without knowing. Yeah, and I'd like a refund, but apparently I signed a galactic loyalty pact when I offered you soup. A proximity alarm wailed. The pursuing vessel launched a net of energy tendrils. Pure photonic lasso tech. Illegal in 12 sectors. Flashy in all of them. Cale yanked the ship hard left, brushing asteroid debris. Ian screamed like someone watching a beloved coffee mug fall in slow motion. Remind me, he gasped, what your escape plan is. Cal narrowed her eyes. Improvisation. I hate improvisation. That's how my cousin lost a kidney on a dating app. As the net closed in, Cal rerouted power to the inertial dampeners, then punched a small red lever Ian had labeled, Do Not Touch Unless on Fire. The ship vanished in a burst of blinding green light. They reappeared 6 seconds later in the gravity well of a nearby moon, belly flopping onto a crater field. The wrench bounced once, twice, then skidded sideways like a drunk turtle and stopped. Silence. Ian groaned from under a pile of emergency blankets. I think we just licked the moon. Kyle exhaled slowly. We lost them. You sure? Because I think part of them is still lodged in our exhaust vent. She slumped into the pilot's seat. The tension in her face softened, just a little. I'm sorry, she said after a moment. You are now part of this. Ian sat up, blinking stars from his eyes. Yeah, I got that impression right around the time I was declared optional meat. Kyle turned to him, serious now. If you wish to leave, I will understand. Ian scratched his chin. Are you kidding? You made my ship actually fly. You fought off a stealth cruiser, and you're apparently some kind of sparkly space queen. She raised an eyebrow. That is one way to put it. Ian stood groaning. I'm not going anywhere. Not until you explain what a high matriarch does, and whether I get a cool title too. Kyle studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Very well, she said. But first, you should know. The last person who stood beside me ended up ruling 2 moons. Ian grinned. Awesome! I always wanted my own moon. Maybe I'll put in a donut shop. She didn't laugh, but the corners of her mouth twitched. Outside, dust rose gently over the crater, settling over the ship like a thin veil. The black vessel was gone, for now. The moon's surface was less moon and more lumpy sadness. Ian discovered this after stepping out to inspect the damage and immediately tripping over a root that shouldn't have existed on a barren crater. It turned out someone had terraformed patches of it for ecological research, which mostly meant errant plant life and the occasional grumpy marmalade-colored squirrel bot. Kale followed, silent and graceful, walking as though low gravity was her native state. Ian, by contrast, bounced like a malfunctioning marionette. "So," he said, brushing dirt off his knees, "are there, like, rules to being a space queen? Do you have to attend meetings or approve planetary slogans?" Cal was scanning the horizon with a slender device that looked suspiciously like a fork. "It's not a monarchy. High matriarchs are selected by consensus from the astral Centauri, telepathic link voters chosen by age and empathy compatibility." "Ah, yes," Ian said. "Democratic mind control. Very progressive." She gave him a sidelong look. "We don't control minds. We just hear them clearly." "That explains why you're so good at reading sarcasm." "I am still calibrating sarcasm," she admitted. "It's structurally illogical." "Exactly. That's what makes it beautiful." They walked back to the ship. The hull had a fresh gouge where the ship had kissed the moon too hard. Cal ran a hand across it, then tilted her head. "You named this vessel the Spare Wrench?" "Well," Ian said, "originally it was the Glory of Saturn, but that felt like false advertising. This name sets expectations low. That way, if the engines don't explode, people are impressed." Inside, the ship's AI had rebooted in panic mode. Every door was locked, every light was blinking red, and it had selected the classical Terran Ride of the Valkyries as the alert tone. "Override code accepted," Kale murmured, placing 2 fingers on the panel. The lights calmed. The music died. Ian stared. "Okay, that's the second time you've made my ship behave. What kind of hacker magic is this?" "I bonded with the control matrix." "You bonded with—" "Oh no. Did you just become this ship's emotional support goddess?" "It's mostly mechanical. It obeys loyalty algorithms." "Great. My ship's more obedient to you than to me." "This is fine. Everything is fine." Kyle moved toward the nav console, now calmly displaying their position. A remote quadrant outside common travel lanes, cloaked by the local gravitational fuzz of twin planetoids. For now, they were hidden. "Explain something to me," Ian said, dropping into the co-pilot seat and spinning in it like a bored child. "Why were those goons trying to take you back? Did you run away from a coronation or something?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she retrieved a small orb from her cloak. When activated, it projected a hologram above the console, a massive hall made of translucent crystal, where a crowd of beings bowed before a tall figure standing beneath a star-mapped canopy. It was Kyle, uninjured, radiant, but visibly burdened. "I was not meant to rule," she said. "The Sentry chose me out of necessity. War had fractured the Dominion. I ended the war, but in doing so, became something I didn't choose." Ian frowned. "So you pieced out?" "I vanished during a treaty signing. My advisors believed it was cowardice." "And it wasn't?" Kale turned off the hologram. "It was survival of my own mind." Ian leaned back. "Makes sense. I once ghosted a union meeting just to avoid free bagels and aggressive small talk. Yours is more epic, but I relate." Her gaze softened. "You make light of everything." "It's a coping mechanism. I'm like a cosmic clown with a wrench. But hey, if laughter keeps us from screaming into the vacuum, I'm all in." She almost smiled again. Then the proximity alert buzzed once. Not alarm, but curiosity. Ian tapped the display. "Incoming comm signal. Low frequency. Weird modulation. Origin. Unknown." Kel moved fast, fingers sweeping over controls. "That's not Dominion tech." The screen blinked, then a face appeared. A translucent cube with blinking eyes and a mustache made of static. "Greetings," it chirped. "Welcome to Puddlebot Outpost 9. Please state your intentions, lunch preferences, and favorite type of cheese." Ian blinked. "What?" "I said," the cube repeated cheerfully, "welcome to Puddlebot Outpost 9, a proud, slightly unstable relic of the pre-fusion era. We have hammocks." Kel narrowed her eyes. "This unit's processing core is fractured." "Correct," it replied, "but the hammocks are fine." Ian grinned. "We could use a rest stop. Maybe they've got non-hostile pudding." The cube's eyes sparkled. "Even better, we have quantum mousse, It exists in multiple flavors until observed. The outpost came into view, a squat metallic dome wedged between rocks, patched with colorful tarps and surrounded by solar panels arranged in spirals. A faded neon sign flashed WIFI, JUICEHOPE. They docked with mild turbulence. The airlock hissed open to reveal a corridor lined with moss, disco lighting, and surprisingly pleasant lo-fi music. Ian stepped in first. This feels like someone built a spa inside a garage. I love it. Kale followed cautiously. Be alert. A robot rolled up, essentially a glorified trash can with googly eyes. Hello, travelers. Would you like foot massages or existential counseling? Yes, Ian said. Both it is. The lounge inside featured beanbags, a chocolate fountain, and a screen playing old Earth Cat videos. Kyle, after scanning the room and confirming no threats, finally allowed herself to sit. Ian dropped onto a beanbag and sighed. Honestly, best hideout I've ever crashed into. Kyle watched a cat fall off a table and land in a bowl. These creatures lack dignity, and that's what makes them powerful. A long silence followed, comfortable this time. Then Kale asked quietly, would you truly stand beside someone hunted by the galaxy? Ian shrugged. As long as they're cool with bad coffee, duct tape furniture, and possibly ruling a moon one day, yeah, I'm in. She looked at him, unreadable. Then I must prepare you. If they discover I'm alive, the council won't just come for me. They'll come for what I left behind. Ian raised an eyebrow. Which is? She hesitated. The flux core. That sounds vaguely ominous. It is, and it listens to me alone. Ian finished his mousse, which had unexpectedly turned into lemon basil flavor. Well then, he said, guess we'd better fix the ship, name our team, and find some hammocks. She tilted her head. Name our team? Yeah, you know, like Space Royalty and the Grease Monkey. I propose co-commanders. See? We're already co-parenting a spaceship. Progress from the corner, a robot played a soft victory jingle and offered them towels. Ian took two, one for sweat, one just in case the flux core ever cried. The Puddlebot outpost proved to be exactly the kind of improbable sanctuary Ian didn't know he needed. While Kyle spent her hours in quiet recalibration, tuning psychic shielding, cross-referencing Dominion frequencies, and occasionally staring at walls like they owed her answers, Ian found solace in the outpost's bizarre amenities. He was in the middle of a laser-powered foot soak, one foot glowing blue and the other suspiciously growing moss, when the lounge lighting dimmed and the AI voice returned, sounding slightly more nervous than usual. Notice, a heavily encrypted signal has been intercepted. Origin unknown. Content politely aggressive. Ian blinked. Politely aggressive? Like, we're going to vaporize you but with hugs? Kyle appeared behind him. She'd been in one of the meditation chambers, where the pillows whispered affirmations. Let me see it. Ian tapped the console, which now displayed a rotating sphere made entirely of punctuation marks. Kale's eyes narrowed. It's a cipher, Dominion class, layered sixfold. Can you crack it? I designed it. She tapped a series of pressure points on the console. Not the keys, but the actual casing. It responded like a purring animal, unfolding new sequences. After a few seconds, the message decoded into text, hovering above them in red script. The consort has been located. Proceeding to neutralize emotional leverage. Mobilizing council proxies. Prepare the flux core for extraction. Ian scratched his head. Okay, I have so many questions. Starting with, I'm the leverage? Cal nodded. You offered sanctuary. That makes you a liability. Well, that's new. Usually I just make people mildly uncomfortable. She turned away, already moving toward the ship. They've discovered the signal remnants from our last jump. They'll trace us here within a standard hour. Ian grabbed his boots, one of which had started playing jazz from the soul. We can't outrun them again. The wrench still needs a new right thruster, and I'm pretty sure the fusion stabilizer's being held together with hope and chewing gum. Kale didn't slow. Then we hold them off. Ian jogged after her, lopsided. With what, Kale? We've got one malfunctioning plasma turret, a sassy AI, and a stack of towels that smell like citrus regret. She reached the ship and opened the hidden compartment beneath the rear cargo hatch. Ian had always assumed it was just where old maintenance manuals went to die. Instead, it slid open to reveal a small orb, floating, humming, radiating faint pulses of light and something that smelled like ozone and dreams. "That's the flux core," she said. Ian stared. "That looks like it could power a civilization or ruin a Sunday brunch." "Both," she said. "It is semi-sentient. It will respond to those it deems bonded." Ian stepped closer. "You mean like imprinted?" "It responds to sincerity, intent, heart." He blinked. "So we're fighting the council with empathy?" She looked at him. "In part," he sighed. "This is why I never joined politics." Back aboard the wrench, the AI attempted to lock the doors in protest of impending doom, but Kale overrode it with a tone-based command. Two notes sung under her breath that made every light flicker in reverence. They had exactly 43 minutes before the arrival of the council's proxies. Ian passed the time doing what he did best, panicking efficiently. He fortified the cargo bay with spare crates, converted the dishwashing unit into a short-range EMP emitter, and taped a warning sign over the airlock that read, "Caution, unstable Terran with wrench." Kel, meanwhile, stood in quiet communion with the flux core. It floated beside her, responding to her emotions like a mirror made of light and quantum feelings. She looked calm, resigned maybe. "Have you ever thought about running away permanently?" Ian asked, adjusting a panel over the engine array. "I did," she said. "I thought anonymity would free me." "And did it?" "It gave me silence, but not peace." Ian nodded slowly. "Same. I once tried to live in a floating junk barge to avoid my landlord. Ended up falling in love with an exosuit repair tech who turned out to be married to her work, and also to a lizard. Legally." Cal tilted her head. "You draw strange parallels." "It's a gift." The sensors beeped. "Incoming vessels. 3. Configuration. Council proxy class. Weapons hot. Manners cold." Ian snapped to attention. "Wrench is ready to fire." "Barely." Kel turned to the flux core. "It's time." The orb pulsed once and flew to the center of the ship, embedding itself in the nav systems. A deep vibration passed through the hull, not violent, but steady, like a heartbeat sinking to a song only Kale could hear. As the council ships entered firing range, Kale stood in the center of the bridge, eyes closed and projected. Projected. Not voice, not radio, consciousness. A wave of presence spread outward like a sunburst, hitting the 3 ships in orbit with raw signal. Ian watched, slack-jawed, as the weapon arrays on the lead ship flickered, then shut down. "They're hesitating," he breathed. Kale's voice, calm, unwavering, reached him and them all at once. "You came for war. I offer stillness." One ship powered down completely. The second rotated its position and went dark. The third fired a warning shot. Ian yelped as the beams skimmed their shields. "Guess they missed empathy class," he shouted. Kyle opened her eyes. "Then we speak in another way." She touched the console. The flux core brightened. Ian felt the temperature drop, then rise again in an instant, like space itself was hiccuping. A surge of blue light shot outward, enveloping the remaining ship in a harmless but utterly disorienting storm of shifting gravitational pockets. They weren't damaged, but entirely disarmed. Their ship slowly rotated like a fish stunned by opera. Ian whooped. "We just de-escalated an interstellar assault with feelings and physics." Kyle exhaled. "They will retreat, but more will come." Ian plopped into the co-pilot chair. "Then we move again, somewhere even we don't expect." She nodded, stepping away from the console. As the wrench lifted off from the moon, leaving the lazy outpost and its towel-dispensing robots behind, Ian looked over at Kyle. "I gotta ask," he said, "are you sure the flux core is not just in love with you?" She didn't smile, but the core pulsed once, softly, warmly, and Ian could swear it was laughing. They parked the spare wrench in the orbital shadow of a hollowed-out asteroid known to smugglers as Whisper Rock, though Ian insisted on calling it Rocky. No one argued. Not because it was a good name, but because Kale had just neutralized 3 council ships with what appeared to be feelings and a glowing marble. Inside the ship, things had settled into a new, surreal normal. Ian had learned how to speak 3 words of High Dominion Standard, all of which turned out to mean potato. Kale had reprogrammed the ship's AI to stop threatening to eject them during minor turbulence, and the flux core had started humming jazz when Ian entered the room, which was either endearing or deeply concerning. "We've been quiet for 12 hours, Ian said, chewing a nutrient stick that claimed to be cinnamon adjacent. "No missile salvos, no psychic ultimatums. I don't trust it." Kyle nodded, reading from a translucent data slate that displayed Dominion news feeds. "They're negotiating with each other. The council is divided. Because of you. Because of us." Ian raised an eyebrow. "You mean me? The guy who used duct tape to hold the coffee machine together is now an accidental revolutionary?" "You gave me time to choose." "That's weirdly flattering and terrifying." Kyle stood, her ceremonial robe swapped for one of Ian's oversized jackets, sleeves rolled up like she was pretending to be incognito. She looked comfortable, which was disorienting. "I have made a decision," she said. "Please don't say you're turning yourself in. I'm summoning the council to meet." Ian nearly dropped his cinnamon-adjacent stick. "Here?" "Number somewhere neutral, somewhere unpredictable." His eyes narrowed. "Don't say it," she smirked. "Puddlebot Outpost 9. Ian groaned. "They still owe me a refund for that massage that became a confession circle." "Exactly. No one will expect diplomacy in a place with sentient hammocks." 3 hours later, the spare wrench docked once more at the glowing, patched dome of Puddlebot Outpost 9. The council ships arrived cautiously, lacking their usual warbling chorus of superiority. Representatives disembarked, some tall and crystalline, others cloaked in light, and one surprisingly short being who communicated via scented steam. Ian stood beside Kale in the central lounge, which had been hastily rearranged into a galactic forum using beanbags and a table made of fused soda cans. The council members looked confused. Not hostile, just emotionally off balance, like bureaucrats forced to attend a slumber party. Cal began. "You feared I would abandon the Dominion. You feared my bond to the core would be misused. But what I found beyond the throne was not rebellion. It was clarity. And this man," she gestured to Ian, who was mid-slurp of a protein smoothie, "reminded me what leadership can mean when stripped of image." Ian choked. "Wait, I'm part of the speech?" "You became part of it the moment you gave me shelter and offered expired noodles." There was murmuring among the council. The short steam being emitted a puff that smelled like hesitant agreement. Kyle stepped forward, calm and firm. "I will not return to rule as I was. I will not lead alone. I propose the creation of a council that listens to all corners of the Dominion, including the strange, the small, the sarcastic. I nominate Ian, Terran citizen, mechanic, and reluctant philosopher, as co-ambassador of empathic affairs." Ian blinked. "You just made that up, didn't you?" "Yes," she said. He grinned. "Cool. Do I get a badge?" "Probably not." The council deliberated. It took all of 20 minutes, 2 fruit bowls, and one intense staring match with the flux core, which sat levitating politely in a nearby chair. Unanimous agreement, with conditions. Kale would not rule alone. Ian would advise, formally or informally, and the core would remain with them as a stabilizing force and neutral witness. Later, back on the wrench, Ian lay across the pilot seat, 1 foot dangling, staring out the viewport at the stars, now slightly more cooperative. "You know," he said, "this started with you bleeding on my junkyard floor and asking if my food was real." Cal sat beside him. "You were kind. I was bored. You chose not to be afraid." Ian shrugged. "You had cool ears. That probably helped." She leaned her head back. "The galaxy won't stop. There will be more disputes, more conflicts. But maybe," Ian said, "less running." The core hovered silently above the console. A single pulse of warm light filled the room. Agreement or approval, it was hard to say, but it felt like peace. Ian closed his eyes. "So what do co-ambassadors of empathic affairs actually do anyway?" Kyle smiled. "We listen. we speak, and occasionally, we remind the stars that even in chaos, there can be kindness. Ian nodded. And maybe throw in a sarcastic monologue now and then. Essential, she agreed. Outside, stars wheeled quietly. The galaxy didn't stop spinning, but somewhere between laughter, compassion, and the clunking of a very stubborn ship engine, it spun just a little differently. The stars blurred past the window in streaks of furious light as Lyrica gripped the edge of the console, teeth bared, ears twitching with every shudder of the failing ship. The pod had once been sleek, elegant even, until the Galactic Tribunal's launch technicians had retrofitted it with all the grace of a thrown boot. Now it rattled through subspace like an angry tin can hurled by a vengeful god. "Status update," Lyrica snapped. The ship responded in a tone of voice far too chipper for an exiled convict's descent. "Trajectory locked. Destination, Earth. ETA, 93 seconds. Also, your blood pressure is elevated." "My blood pressure is trying to exit my body through my eyeballs. Would you like a breathing exercise?" Lyrica leaned forward and slammed her palm against the override panel. "I'd like you to jettison yourself into the sun." "Noted." The planet loomed ahead, blue and green and smugly unaware. A small, unregulated planet in a backwater spiral arm. Perfect for bearing political mistakes, especially ones with inconvenient data cubes embedded in their rib cages. Lyrica's crime wasn't theft or murder or sedition. It was honesty. And in the Rylonian Empire, honesty was right up there with treason and public nose-picking. The atmosphere hit like a slap. The ship screamed. So did Lyrica, but hers was more controlled, elegant screaming, the kind of screaming that might get nominated for an award. Flames licked the hull, panels exploded. A suspicious red lever flung itself loose and bonked her on the head. "Pod integrity compromised," the ship announced, with what she swore was a laugh. When Lyrica awoke, her head was in a puddle of something that smelled like fermented barnacles and regret. Her arms ached. Her ears were full of hay. She blinked against the smoke and rolled onto her back, taking stock. Her left boot was missing. Her translator ring was sparking, and a cow was staring directly into her soul. It chewed, slowly, judgmentally. "Oh no," she muttered. "I've landed in a livestock cult." The cow blinked. A voice rang out across the field, carried by wind and what could only be described as the world's worst country music. "Ma! Something crashed behind the silo again. I think it's either a meteor or Elon Musk." Lyrica scrambled behind a hay bale, holding her breath. Her ship hissed one final puff of smoke and then went silent, like a drunk passing out at a party. The human who emerged from the house was taller than she expected, not armed. He was wearing pajama pants patterned with cats and space helmets and a hoodie that read NASA, not actually spying on aliens. Probably. He stood in front of the wreckage, scratched his head, and took a long sip from a mug that said, "World's okayest theorist." "Okay," he said slowly, addressing no one in particular. "That's definitely not a weather balloon, and if this is a prank, it's better than the one with the goat in the trampoline." Lyrica considered her options. She could try to run, but her ankle was swollen and her ship was toast. She could threaten him, but he had the exact unbothered energy of someone who'd let a raccoon into his kitchen just to see what it would do. She stepped out from behind the hay bale and raised both hands. "Greetings, Earth native," she said, in her best approximation of diplomatic calm. "I am part of a theater troupe. We're rehearsing for a science fiction production. Very method, extremely immersive." He stared, then blinked, then took another sip of coffee. "Cool," he said. "You're either an alien or a LARPer. Either way, you need waffles." Lyrica squinted. "Waffles?" "Yeah, you look like you crash-landed through 6 dimensions in a waffle iron. Come on." And just like that, the stranger turned and walked away, trusting her to follow, like he hadn't just found a smoking alien pod in his field. "I have a plasma knife," she called after him. "Cool," he shouted back. "I have a microwave that keeps catching fire. We all have our curses." She hesitated only a moment before limping after him, ears twitching with suspicion. Inside the house, the air smelled of syrup and ozone. A ferret glared at her from a hammock made of shoelaces. The human, he introduced himself as Mason, but not like the Illuminati thing, was already pouring batter into a skillet while asking her which planets she'd visited as part of her immersive performance. She played along, barely, and each time she slipped, mentioning the moons of Glarathex or confusing forks with face stabbers, he simply nodded like he was mentally cataloging it for his channel. When he finally asked, "So what was your ship doing with a gamma core drive anyway?" She froze. Mason shrugged. "I mean, I know it's not exactly legal tech on Earth, but the fusion signature was obvious, and you've got Relonian-style wiring in your escape hatch. Plus, your ears are kind of a giveaway." She narrowed her eyes. "You're not screaming." "I screamed inside," he said solemnly. "But also, I'm just happy it wasn't another possum in my attic." "You're not going to turn me in?" He glanced at his ferret. "Zucchini says no. Also, I think if I report this, the FBI will make me disappear, and I have a bingo game next week." Lyraka stared. "You're very strange. You're the one who eats batteries like Altoids." "Fair." Over the next hour, they negotiated a ceasefire in the form of waffles, tea, and a cautious mutual curiosity. She didn't tell him why she was exiled. Not yet. But when he offered her his guest room, "Ignore the lava lamp, it's sentient," she didn't refuse. Outside, above the clouds, a signal beacon blinked once, then vanished. Lyraka sat at the kitchen table, staring at the toaster like it owed her money. Mason, across from her, was halfway through an animated explanation about the internet, completely unaware that he was speaking to someone who had once rerouted a solar flare to destroy a surveillance satellite. "So basically," he said, waving a spoon for emphasis, "humans voluntarily expose all their personal information, thoughts, and emotional breakdowns on a system that's open to everyone, including government agencies, hackers, and that one guy from high school who still insists pyramid schemes work." Lyraka narrowed her eyes. "And you choose to do this?" "Oh yeah, I posted a video last week called 10 Signs Your Cat is an Alien Spy. It got 17,000 views. One of them was probably a real cat." She took another sip of her tea, which tasted like bark and disappointment. Earth beverages were suspiciously non-lethal. "Your species is dangerously confident for a planet that hasn't figured out teleportation?" Mason leaned forward. "Okay, speaking of teleportation, how does yours work? I saw the imprint in your wreckage. That wasn't just propulsion. You were using dimension slicing." Lyraka froze mid-sip. Mason caught the hesitation and raised his eyebrows. "Come on, you're obviously not from Earth, and I'm not going to dissect you. I've only got like 2 scalpels and one of them's for cheese." She sighed. "Fine, but if you tell anyone, I'll vaporize your entire sock drawer." "Joke's on you. I haven't matched a pair since 2014. She smiled in spite of herself. "Dimension slicing uses gravitational scissors, a folded layer tear through quantum edges to shorten space between 2 points. It's crude, dangerous, but efficient for short-range jumps." Mason blinked. "You know what's wild? That almost makes sense. It's like watching Neil deGrasse Tyson explain wormholes, but with slightly more murder energy." From somewhere in the house, the ferret squeaked in protest. Later that evening, Mason insisted on showing her the marvel of human media, television. He loaded up a streaming service and proudly clicked on a documentary titled Ancient Aliens. For 30 minutes, Lyraka watched in silent horror as an overly tanned man explained, with disturbing confidence, that the pyramids were landing pads and that ancient pharaohs were clearly in contact with space bros. "I need to go lie down," she muttered. "You okay? I have to process the fact that your people think aliens traveled thousands of light years to build triangles and confuse farmers." Mason gave her a sympathetic pat on the back. "In our defense, we're working with limited information. And also, those shows get good ratings." "That's worse." Over the next few days, Lyraka began adapting, reluctantly. Mason taught her how to use a microwave, though she short-circuited it twice trying to warm a metal fork. He helped her order Earth clothes online, resulting in a delivery of 7 identical black hoodies and 1 accidental mail-order llama calendar. She repaired her translator ring using parts from a broken blender and a light bulb, which now glowed ominously every time she said the word justice. It wasn't quite peace, but it was the closest she'd known in years. One evening, while Mason was explaining the concept of reality TV, it's like a punishment, but people volunteer for it. Lyraka caught her reflection in the darkened window. Her long ears twitched. Her face was thinner, her eyes less sharp. She looked not happy, but less haunted. Earth was strange, primitive, infuriating, but it didn't expect her to be perfect or silent. Mason was digging through a drawer labeled important-looking cables that probably don't do anything when he pulled out something metal and sleek, an object she hadn't seen in years. "Hey," he said, "this fell out of your pod wreckage the other day. Any idea what it is?" It was a memory shard. Her heart stumbled. She took it slowly, careful not to reveal too much. The surface shimmered, a liquid sheen across its triangular face. It was encoded in a now-defunct Relonian dialect, a dead language, but one she still knew by heart. She turned away. "Just an old file fragment. Anything valuable on it?" "Just math." Mason shrugged. "Cool. I'll keep pretending I know what any of this means." She waited until he left the room, then activated the shard. A holographic projection bloomed in the air, a flickering image of a child, a hybrid child. Her voice, soft, mechanical, whispered through static. "They promised to help. They said the injections would stop the changes, but I still hear them in my head. Please, if anyone sees this, tell them we didn't agree to this." The image cut out. Lyraka closed her eyes. Mason returned, holding up a box of instant noodles. "You want dinner or more interdimensional guilt spirals?" She blinked at him. "What?" "Nothing. Just, your timing is impressively inconvenient." The drone exploded. Not a dramatic fireball-style boom, more like a sputtering hiccup followed by a sad plunk into Mason's koi pond, which incidentally had no koi and hadn't been cleaned since 2019. Mason leaned over the railing of the porch, munching a granola bar. "Did that robot just drown itself out of shame?" Lyraka lowered her left hand, the tips of her fingers still warm from the pulse burst. "It was a scout, cloaked but clumsy." "Scout from where?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into her hoodie pocket and retrieved the memory shard, still dormant. "They're looking for this." Mason stared at the glowy triangle, eyes narrowing with the careful squint of someone who once tried to charge a potato. "I thought you said it was just math." "I lied." "Oh, thank God," he said, dramatically dropping into a porch chair. "If I had to pretend to understand interstellar calculus for one more day, my brain was going to pop like cheap popcorn." She smirked. "It's not calculus. It's worse. It's testimony." Mason sobered. "From who?" Her name was Yavel. She was part of a hybrid cohort on my planet, children genetically engineered with off-world DNA. They said it was to improve adaptability, make future generations better suited for galactic expansion. But the truth was messier. Mason stopped chewing. Messier like allergies? Or messier like, help, I'm growing an extra brain? "Yes." He looked at the now dormant koi pond. "Well, that explains the drone. You've got someone's dirty laundry." "They erased all records of the program, labeled us rebels. I leaked the files. The tribunal called it sedition and banished me to this charming planet of feral squirrels and mayonnaise." "I'm not going to argue with the squirrel thing," Mason said, pointing at one currently stealing birdseed in acrobatic defiance. "But why didn't you just dump the info into the galactic net?" "I tried. They purged it. Every node, every mirror. Only fragments remain, encrypted, scattered, unlinked. This shard is one of the last." Mason leaned back in his chair, cracking his knuckles. "Okay. South, you've got top secret alien whistleblower data. Some interstellar government wants it buried. And we just took out a surveillance drone with what I assume was finger gun magic. Cool. Step 1, build a bunker. Step 2, panic." Lyraka gave him a long look. He shrugged. "Or we could eat nachos and figure out how to leak it properly." "I vote nachos." Inside, while Mason scorched cheese with reckless abandon, Lyraka connected the shard to the modified remains of her ship's transmitter core. Now fused with his old router, and at least one PlayStation controller. The data was intact but corrupted. Video static, audio artifacts, a timestamp that looped endlessly at the same second. I might be able to rebuild this, she muttered. Mason looked up from the microwave. Rebuild? Like recover the full file? Eventually, if I had a neural sequencer. Which you don't. She hesitated. Number. But there's one on this planet. You're kidding. It's in a museum. Still kidding. In Nevada. Mason stopped mid-nacho. You mean the state with Area 51? Elvis chapels and aggressive tumbleweeds? Yes. Oh good, a road trip. The next morning, Mason's 2007 hatchback, lovingly named the Nebulizer, roared to life with a wheeze. It smelled faintly of engine oil and expired dreams. Lyrica wore sunglasses over her elongated ears, which were tucked beneath a beanie that read, I regret nothing. Is it safe to take this vehicle across the desert? She asked. No, Mason said cheerfully, but it has cup holders. By hour 3, they were somewhere in Utah, listening to Mason's playlist titled Songs for Fleeing Shadow Governments. Lyrica was half dozing when Mason casually said, So, I've been thinking, if they're already sending drones, how long before they send something with legs? Depends how desperate they are, and how badly they want plausible deniability. Right, Mason nodded. So, like Tuesday. By the time they reached the museum, a private aerospace collection housed in a suspiciously pyramid-shaped building, they were sunburnt, sleep-deprived, and completely ignored by the receptionist, who was too busy yelling at a tourist for climbing a replica lunar rover. Inside, the neural sequencer sat behind glass, collecting dust and conspiracy theories. I can hotwire it, Lyrica said. Mason glanced around. And by hotwire, do you mean? The lights dimmed. A low hum filled the room. Never mind, he whispered. Definitely that. While she interfaced with the device, Mason kept watch by pretending to be part of the exhibit, narrating his own life story in a deep announcer voice. Here we observe the average Earth male, rarely spotted outside his natural habitat of snack aisles and existential dread. The sequencer beeped. The hologram reformed. Yvelle's face returned, clearer now, her voice stronger. This is a message to anyone listening. They're not just altering genes. They're embedding command structures, thought loops. If I say the word starlight, I shut down. It's built into my neural mesh. I've seen others collapse. I don't know who to trust anymore. But if you can hear this, please, don't let them rewrite us. Lyrica's breath caught. She whispered, She was 13. Mason didn't speak. He reached out and squeezed her hand. Quiet for once. The transmission ended, but a second file emerged. This one marked trace log, failed deletion attempt. Lyrica accessed it, and her screen filled with signatures, coordinates, timestamps, encrypted logins. One of them pulsed red, an active signal. They're still running it, she said. Running what? The program. Mason frowned. Then we need to do more than leak it. We need to stop it. Lyrica looked at him. You're just a human. Yeah, he said, cracking his neck. But I've got Wi-Fi, moral outrage, and zero sense of self-preservation. She blinked. That might actually work. Outside, something shimmered in the air. A cloaked ship landed silently in the desert dust. Mason was halfway through a celebratory churro in the museum parking lot when the air behind him crackled like bubble wrap made of doom. He turned slowly, mouth still full of cinnamon, and came face to face with what looked like a walking car engine, dressed for a rave. The bounty hunter stood 7 feet tall, wore black chrome armor that shimmered between visible spectrums, and had a laser cannon for a left arm, and what Mason swore was a sword made of frozen lightning for the other. Hi, Mason said. Would you like a churro? The bounty hunter didn't answer. Lyrica stepped between them, arms up. Designation? The figure tilted its head, the armor flexing with a hydraulic hiss. Blex, Galactic Recovery Division, Secondary Class, Mission, Retrieval of Code Subject Zeta, 944, alive or lightly scorched, Mason whispered to Lyrica. What does lightly scorched mean in bounty hunter language? Probably something you'll find out in the next 60 seconds. I regret my life choices. Blex raised the cannon. LaRocca pulled Mason down just in time to avoid a searing bolt of blue plasma that fried the remains of the museum's churro stand. Flaming sugar bits rained down. "You monster," Mason gasped. "That churro was innocent." "Split," LaRocca ordered. "I'll distract him." "I don't like the word split. Can we call it a strategic separation with eventual reconvening and pancakes?" "Run, Mason!" He ran, not gracefully, more like a panicked Muppet with loose shoelaces. But it got the job done. LaRocca ducked and rolled, drawing out a microblade that unfolded with a satisfying hiss. "You're not authorized for this retrieval. The tribunal revoked bounty privileges in non-aligned systems." Blex didn't flinch. "This system is pre-sentient, not covered by diplomatic code." "Says who?" "Says me," Blex replied, then swung his lightning blade with the force of someone who really hated their job. LaRocca blocked it, sparks erupting as the two weapons met. Around them, abandoned souvenir hats caught fire. Somewhere an alarm blared, though no one appeared to be coming. Typical Earth reaction time. Mason, meanwhile, had doubled back around the museum, grabbed the neural sequencer, and was currently stuffing it into the trunk of the nebulizer with the urgency of a man packing illegal fireworks during a hurricane. He heard the clash of metal, the sizzling crackle of energy blades, and the unmistakable whine of something powering up. "Please don't be a death ray," he muttered. The sky briefly turned orange. "Definitely a death ray." Back inside the parking lot, LaRocca was losing ground. Blex was stronger, his cybernetic limbs calibrated for heavy combat. She fought with precision and fury, but she'd been in hiding too long. Her stamina was fraying. "Give me the shard," Blex growled, voice like gravel in a blender. LaRocca panted. "Number, but I'll give you a headache." She jabbed her blade into the small gap beneath his left shoulder joint. Sparks flew. Blex stumbled. Mason appeared behind a half-melted food truck. "Hey, murder toaster." Blex turned. Mason threw a microwave. It bounced off harmlessly. There was a pause. "Okay," Mason muttered. "Not my best plan." LaRocca launched forward while Blex was distracted, slamming her elbow into his helm and driving him back. Mason grabbed her hand, yanked her toward the car. They dove in. The nebulizer screamed as it peeled out, leaving behind a confused bounty hunter and the smell of burning oil and synthetic churros. 10 miles down the highway, Mason finally dared to breathe. "So, bounty hunter?" "Yep." "With a literal arm cannon?" "Yep." "And you stabbed him?" "Yep." He blinked. "Okay, cool. I just need to update my definition of eventful Thursday." LaRocca leaned back, catching her breath. "We need to go somewhere off-grid." "You mean like camping?" She gave him a look. He sighed. "Fine, I know a guy." The guy, as it turned out, was an ex-hacker named Trenton who lived in an abandoned amusement park and believed toasters were government spies. He wore a cape made of Ethernet cords and insisted on being called the Server Lord. Trenton took one look at LaRocca and said, "She's cool. I can tell by her aura." Mason whispered, "That's because she's slightly radioactive." In a rusted-out Ferris wheel booth, converted into a server den, they plugged the sequencer into Trenton's rig. The screens lit up. LaRocca's files spilled out: names, locations, genetic maps. Proof of the hybrid experiments, of memory tampering, of enforced obedience coded into neural networks. "This is massive," Trenton breathed. "You're sitting on a data nuke." "I need to transmit it," LaRocca said, "to the galactic relay points. But if I use standard channels, they'll intercept it." Mason leaned forward. "What about Earth's most powerful transmitter?" Trenton squinted. "You mean the Jumbotron at Monster Truck Apocalypse 9? "Exactly." LaRocca blinked. "Your most powerful transmitter is at a truck rally?" Mason nodded solemnly. "And it has nachos the size of your head." LaRocca sighed. "Your planet is absurd. And yet, here we are." Trenton prepped the signal. "You'll have 5 minutes tops before they trace the burst. After that, your bounty goes from mild inconvenience to galactic priority." "We only need one," LaRocca said. That night, as they loaded up for the drive to the rally, Mason turned to her and said, "We could still run." "We could," she said. "But I'm done running." He smiled. "Good, because I already bought tickets." "Wait, you paid?" "Of course," he said. We might be rebels, but we're not savages. Outside, the sky pulsed with a faint shimmer. Blex was already tracking them. The parking lot of the Monster Truck Apocalypse 9 event was a sensory violation. Engine roars, fireworks, bacon-scented fog machines, and people wearing foam hats shaped like combustion engines. Laraka stared at it all, visibly shaken. Your species has weaponized nonsense. Mason grinned, adjusting the signal transmitter hidden in a backpack that used to carry his high school trumpet. We call it freedom. They moved through the crowd with purpose. Laraka wore a pair of oversized sunglasses and a borrowed hoodie with a wolf howling at a double moon. Mason carried a bag of nachos the size of his torso, partly for cover, mostly for emotional support. Trenton had already patched the neural sequencer into the stadium's central control system from a shady back channel, allegedly using the password Big Tires for Life. All right, Mason said, eyes scanning the control tower. That's the transmitter booth. We get up there, plug in, and boom. Galactic truth bomb delivered. Laraka nodded. And what happens after that? Best case scenario? We start an interstellar revolution. Worst case? We're vaporized to the tune of Born to be Wild. They slipped past a security guard distracted by a hot dog juggling robot. The booth was unguarded, thankfully, unless you counted the laminated sign that said, authorized personnel only and also dog. Inside, the transmitter was already humming, a beast of wires and screens that looked like it had been built by caffeine and wishful thinking. Mason opened the pack and pulled out the neural shard, now stabilized in a cracked VR headset. Once it hits the relay, the info's everywhere. DeepNet, black channels, mirrored caches. They won't be able to scrub it again. Laraka stared at the screen, fingers hovering. Once I do this, there's no going back. You don't have to do it alone. She met his eyes. I was alone before, she said softly. Now I'm just scared. That's how you know it matters. She smiled. That's disgustingly wise for someone whose ferret thinks he's a warlock. Mason shrugged. Zucchini has strong opinions. She touched the controls. The data began to upload. Across light years, the information spread. Names of the children, footage of the tests, voice records of ministers sanctioning control implants. The system shook, and somewhere, on another world, a child with altered eyes looked up and felt something inside her unlock. Then the doors blew in. Blex arrived in a thunder of metal and fury, plasma cannon glowing. You shouldn't have done that. Mason stepped forward, arms raised. Hey, big guy, can we not vaporize anything until I finish my nachos? Blex ignored him, aiming at Laraka. She didn't flinch. You're too late. It's already out. The bounty hunter advanced. Then I'm taking you in. Both of you. Actually, Mason said, slowly pulling a device from his pocket, you're not. He pressed the button. Nothing happened. Okay, he said. That was supposed to trigger a distraction involving 12 drones, 3 leaf blowers, and 1 very angry goose. Give it a second. A window shattered. A ferret launched across the room wearing a colander helmet. Chaos exploded. Laraka tackled Blex as Zucchini latched onto his head, hissing like a demonic squeaky toy. Mason, now brandishing a flaming nacho, swung wide and accidentally set off a confetti cannon that fired straight into Blex's core. Smoke, screaming, avian war cries. By the time Blex ripped the ferret off his face, his suit was glitching, targeting system offline. I'm going to disintegrate that rodent, he growled. Laraka stood over him, blade pointed at his chest. Number? You're going to listen. He paused. The tribunal lied to you. You serve a system that buries the truth with bodies. Look at the feed. Look what they made you hunt. For a long moment, Blex didn't move. Then he said, they told me hybrids were unstable. They were. You made them unstable. He slumped. I don't know who I work for anymore. Then maybe it's time to stop working for them. A beat passed. Blex deactivated his cannon. I hate moral revelations. We all do, Mason said, wiping cheese off his shirt. The rally announcer's voice echoed through the stadium. And now, the Flaming Mammoth vs. the Crushinator in a demolition cage match? Nobody cared. Not anymore. An hour later, in a motel room that smelled of carpet glue and dreams deferred, Laraka sat by the window, watching stars blink into view. It's done, she said. The information's spreading. Protests, trials. Some systems are demanding a full tribunal audit. And us? Mason asked, sipping lukewarm soda. I'm technically still a fugitive, but Blex filed a false report, said I died during a tragic mid-air collision with a sentient vending machine. That sounds about right. He also dropped this off before leaving. She tossed Mason a small envelope. Inside was an Earth visa. In her name. He blinked. Wait, you're staying? If you'll have me. I mean, yeah, obviously. I need someone to help me deal with Zucchini. He started levitating things. She chuckled. Your planet is chaos. Yeah, he grinned, but it's our chaos. Weeks passed. They moved into a slightly less terrible house. Mason started a podcast called Aliens, Ethics, and Egg Sandwiches. Laraka joined the online debate circuit, casually dismantling conspiracy theorists who thought Pluto was a government decoy. Zucchini began writing a memoir, and somewhere across the galaxy, systems changed. Not because of war, but because one outlaw girl found someone who believed her and chose to fight back. Thanks. I try, she pocketed the shard. The truth was surfacing again. She'd buried it beneath jokes and waffles and microwaves, but it wasn't gone. And now somehow, Earth was part of it. This strange planet with its sarcasm and cereal, and humans who offered trust without proof. She sat down beside him, took the noodles and said, Do all your guests get involved in galactic conspiracies? Only the pretty ones. She elbowed him. Outside, a drone hovered at the edge of the tree line, cloaked and humming. Far above, a signal pinged once, then vanished.